We have been discussing a great deal in regards to end times Bible prophecy. This series is trying to be as comprehensive as possible in order that there is a reference for those that desire to be awake to what is happening in this world, and they want to choose our Father's kingdom and reject Satan's false one that he is promoting. If you have not been following this series from the beginning, and maybe you just caught some episodes from the later parts, I pray that you go back from the beginning and understand truly what is going on with these prophetic events. All of this is what is to come, and if you're not ready for it, and you are more attached to the system, you are taking a great risk that you should not take. The time that is coming is when Yah will be testing the whole world. In the last part of the series, we went through the events that will take place during the Great Tribulation. We went through the 7 seals, the 7 trumpets, and 7 bowl judgments that will take place as Yah deals with the world on behalf of his people. For me personally, as I read about these events, it does not place fear or worry in me because I know that none of this has anything to do with me. If you are watching this, you should understand that if you truly focus on Yah and make sure that you are waiting on him, when he calls us, you will be ready for him, and we do not need to be amongst those that will be tested. The important thing to understand is what Yahusha promised to the faithful church of Philadelphia. Because you have kept my command to persevere, I also will keep you from the hour of trial which shall come upon the whole world to test those who dwell on the earth. Revelation chapter 3 verse 10. Now we know many people use it falsely to use it for the pre-tribulation rapture. You should not use it in this way, but you should understand what he's truly saying. He said he will keep us or guard us from those trials that come upon the rest of the whole world as he tests them. So you should understand that it is the rest of the world that is going to be tested. Those that are in his faithful assembly do not have anything to do with these tests. And so the way I see it, those of us who are faithful will hear his voice and answer his call when he calls us, and we will be ready for him and we will be guarded. But those people that keep following religion, following false doctrines like the pre-tribulation rapture, still debating and believing in these Rev 2.9s, those that argue about keeping his commandments, they are the ones that need to go through some tests, and it will be them scattered around the world dealing with these events. The goal for this ministry is to prepare as many of us around the world that are truly faithful and waiting for Yahuwah to fulfill his word and gather us, and I want us to be ready. I do not know what is going to happen in exacts, but I know if we stay focused and faithful, we will be ready, and we will hear him and move. Now, the rest of the world may call us crazy. There will more than likely be some probable spin in the media about us. A lot of false things that will make it sound like we're zealots, something about race or whatever. But if you have a relationship with our Father and know how to trust him, you will be ready. And so that has been my priority in teaching because we are not in the abundance, but we are very much a minority. The difference in us, though, is having biblical knowledge. Because if you understand Yah's promises and what he has prophesied about us and for us, and then you understand the judgments that are coming, you're not going to have to guess about what is happening because you live with biblical expectations and you're kingdom-minded. So for me, I'm waiting for the second Exodus and waiting to see what Yah does to call us. I know we won't get clarity until the world shifts. And so this is why my expectation is for war to come, because the more the world goes bad, the closer we get to what our Father has promised. So with that said, in the last video, we went over the events of the Great Tribulation. As we continue to move towards the Battle of Armageddon, there are a few events that we cannot ignore, and the most important one is the subject of Mystery Babylon. This is a subject that needs to be covered and understood. Now, before we get into Mystery Babylon, the empire that will be like the Babylon that took the Yahudim into captivity the first time, what we need to do first is discuss the whore of Babylon. This is the subject that is not met without controversy. The biggest reason being that people have declared the Roman Catholic Church to be the whore, and by that declaration, it has been case closed, and therefore people are without understanding. We need to discuss this topic because when it is understood, it can really help bring clarity to the falsehoods in organized religion and why we must be more diligent in our faith. So we will discuss the whore of Babylon. Let's begin. Okay, so before we start, let me provide this disclaimer. I am not perfect. I do not claim to be Mr. Know-It-All. I just try to speak what I feel Father has placed on my heart with understanding he has given me. There will be disagreement, I'm sure, to this message, no matter what I say, because everyone has a view, just as I do. I do not argue about the book of Revelation because it's all prophetic. It's about the future. So there's no telling if anyone is right or wrong, so there's no reason to debate and argue. Please, if you disagree and have a different opinion, it is okay. All that I ask is you state your alternative view with respect and without hostility, because it's truly uncalled for. Though many of you seem to want to treat me this way, I am not your enemy. And that just needs to be said. Let's get on with it. In order to discuss this topic, we will start from Revelation chapter 17, and we can take it from there. This chapter comes right after the events of the 7 seals, trumpets, and bowls are discussed. That does not mean that it happens right after them. I do not believe it works that way. But John is just describing what Yah is showing him. Let's read it first, and then we can discuss it. Revelation chapter 17. Then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and talked with me, saying to me, "Come, I will show you the judgment of the great harlot who sits on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth were made drunk with the wine of her fornication." So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast, which was full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls, having in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the filthiness of her fornication. And on her forehead a name was written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and of the abominations of the earth. I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Yahusha. And when I saw her, I marveled with great amazement. But the angel said to me, "Why did you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carries her, which has 7 heads and the 10 horns. The beast that you saw was, and is not, and will ascend out of the bottomless pit and go to perdition. And those who dwell on the earth will marvel, whose names are not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they see the beast that was, and is not, and yet is. Here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. There are also 7 kings. 5 have fallen, 1 is, and the other has not yet come. And when he comes, he must continue a short time. The beast that was, and is not, is himself also the 8th, and is of the 7, and is going to perdition. The 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have received no kingdom as yet, but they receive authority for 1 hour as kings with the beast. These are of one mind, and they will give their power and authority to the beast. They will make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and those who are with him are called, chosen, and faithful. Then he said to me, "The waters which you saw, where the harlot sits, are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. And the 10 horns which you saw on the beast, these will hate the harlot, make her desolate and naked, eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. For Elohim has put it into their hearts to fulfill his purpose, to be of one mind, and to give their kingdom to the beast, until the words of Elohim are fulfilled. And the woman whom you saw is that great city which reigns over the kings of the earth." Revelation chapter 17, verses 1 through 18. Okay, so this is an important chapter. As I was stating earlier, do not read this as something that happens after the bowl judgments. If you listen to everything the angel shows John, it shows that this will go along with events that happened in Revelation chapter 13. But let's break it down. At the end of chapter 16, we saw the bowl judgments, which was the last judgment that came on the earth. Chapter 17 covers the specifics of when the whore of Babylon is destroyed. Now, what I see many people do is tie in Revelation chapter 17 with Revelation chapter 18, but I do not believe this should be done. Babylon the Great is receiving judgment in both of these chapters, yes, but if you're reading objectively, these 2 chapters are talking about different entities. Chapter 17 is talking of the whore of Babylon, and this is dealing with the religious entity. Now, what everyone wants to do is easily sum it up to be the Roman Catholic Church and declare it to be case closed, but I believe that is much deeper than that. So allow me to explain. The last verse of this chapter says, "And the woman whom you saw is that great city which reigns over the kings of the earth." So in today's world, I understand why people just want to go and say it's Rome. But to really understand this, we must go back in history to really understand what that great city is. In understanding this subject, you must understand the history of the first Babylon, where Nimrod and Semiramis built the pagan religious structure that went through the ancient world empires from Mesopotamia, then Egypt, ending in Rome. So we must go back to understand this. You must go back to the beginning when false religion began in this world, and that will bring you back to Samaria. It all starts with Nimrod. Nimrod is the father of paganism. You read about him briefly in Genesis chapter 10, but you can read about him in more depth in the book of Jasher. He was worshipped as the sun god and known by many names. The Hebrews referred to him as Baal as well as Moloch. His followers were Baal worshippers, and because of their worship of him, they were associated with actions of idolatry, demon worship, human sacrifice, and many other occult practices. There was an absolute and very clear separation between Yasharel, Israel, and the followers of Moloch. In the scriptures, you will see Yahuwah expressly speak to Israel against following those who worship Moloch. Again, you shall say to the children of Israel, whoever of the children of Israel or of the strangers who dwell in Israel, who gives any of his descendants to Moloch, he shall surely be put to death. The people of the land shall stone him with stones. Leviticus chapter 20, verse 2. There are many different references to Moloch, who again goes back to Nimrod. In paganism, he is the sun god, also known as father god. Now, Nimrod's mother/wife was Semiramis. When Nimrod died, she became pregnant and found another way to stay in power. She told the people it was the spirit of Nimrod that impregnated her. She claimed she was having a virgin birth from the spirit of Nimrod. She claimed to have slept with no man and was impregnated by Nimrod's spirit. Nimrod was now a father and Semiramis was the mother. She made herself a goddess, claiming that she was divinely created. She had them believe she came down to earth from the moon in a giant moon egg that fell into the Euphrates River. The Queen of Babylon, aka Madonna, aka Ishtar, aka Semiramis, is the mother god in paganism. She is known as the moon goddess. When the baby was born, he would then be celebrated as a god, celebrated as Nimrod back from the underworld. She claimed that her baby was reborn, renewed, or otherwise a reincarnated Nimrod. The child's name was Tammuz. Now, when you study this, and as I have gone over in many other videos, there are many parts to the story of paganism that can bring more clarity on many of the different traditions that people hold on to today, like Christmas and Easter. Like with Easter, why there's always a ham served on Easter, when Yah told Israel that swine was unclean. When understanding the pagan beliefs, you understand why there are Easter eggs and hot cross buns. None of those traditions are scriptural, and they don't have anything to do with the word of Yah. But believers around the world partake in these traditions because it's just a tradition being passed down. But this video isn't specifically about Easter. I made videos about Easter, so if you want to know more about that holiday specifically, watch that video. The point I'm making is that much of these holidays and traditions that many take part in today all stem from paganism. Paganism is the worship of the three god structure, Father God, Mother Goddess, and Son of God, along with many other small gods. It is a polytheistic belief in many gods. It is an unholy trinity and has been the basis of religion all over the world for millennia. Now please don't get lost, I had to go over that. We are discussing the Whore of Babylon. And the Whore of Babylon is a major part of this unholy trinity. And the Whore of Babylon is that mother goddess, the moon goddess. She is a spiritual figure that has been worshipped for millennia, but somehow it is not something that is picked up on by most people, especially by the self-proclaimed Christian community who is supposed to be expressly against her. We see her everywhere. We see people worshiping her everywhere. We see churches in her name, but most people still are not making the full connection. When I say this to Catholics, they're quick to shout that we don't worship Mary, but then you see one of their churches called Mary, Queen of the Universe. I mean, look at this. People aren't making the connection, and even those that go to these churches, many of them don't want to understand what they are doing. So before we talk about what the angel showed John in Revelation 17, it is important that you do not get lost with understanding who the Whore of Babylon is. Let's keep going back in the past so we understand this mother goddess figure more clearly. Like I said, she starts in the first Babylon, Samaria, with Semiramis. After Nimrod's death and the birth of Tammuz, Semiramis, now widow of Nimrod, mother of Tammuz, came to be represented as the pagan fertility goddess. It is important to know that the original pagan festival of Easter was a sex orgy that celebrated the return of life via the fertility of Semiramis, aka Ishtar's conception of Tammuz. Worshippers of the ancient Babylonian religion celebrated the conception, not birth, but the conception of Tammuz on the first Sunday after the full moon that followed the spring equinox. They celebrated it by baking cakes to Ishtar, getting drunk, engaging in sex orgies and prostitution in the temple of Ishtar. Women were required to celebrate the conception of Tammuz by lying down in the temple and having sex with whoever entered. Babies were sacrificed in the honor of these pagan gods, and their blood was consumed by their worshippers. The priest of Easter, or Ishtar, would sacrifice infants, human babies, and they would take eggs as a symbol of fertility, and they would dye them in the blood of these sacrificed infants, human babies. That's what these pagan worshippers did. Again, that's why we see Yah expressly speak to Yasharel against it in his law. I will set my face against that man and will cut him off from his people, because he has given some of his descendants to Molech, to defile my sanctuary and profane my holy name. And if the people of the land should in any way hide their eyes from the man when he gives some of his descendants to Moloch, and they do not kill him, then I will set my face against that man and against his family, and I will cut him off from his people and all who prostitute themselves with him to commit harlotry with Moloch. That's Leviticus chapter 20, verses 3 through 5. You see, in the ancient world, there were pagans and there was Israel. This was the separation. The rest of the world were polytheistic. They worshiped many gods. Yahuwah warned Israel of taking part in any of the abominations that the pagan nations participated in. But fast forward today, because religion is so confusing and there's so many of them, people aren't really able to put two and two together about what is really going on and who is actually being worshipped. But I don't want to get ahead of myself here. What needs to be made clear is that the ancient world worshipped this mother goddess. Israel was the only nation commanded against it. Depending on the different nation, tribe, tongue, or time period, she went by different names. Like in Samaria, she was Semiramis, but in the next major empire after, which was Egypt, she was known as Isis. Now, as the Israelites were moving towards their promised land, which was inhabited by the Hittites, Jebusites, the Amorites, and the Canaanites, those tribes also worshipped the mother goddess. For instance, the Canaanites worshipped the mother goddess under the name Astarte or Ashtaroth. To the Canaanites, she is the queen of heaven. Israel was told many times not to follow after how these nations worship their gods. When Yahuwah, your Elohim, cuts off from before you the nations which you go to dispossess, and you displace them and dwell in their land, take heed to yourself that you are not ensnared to follow them after they are destroyed from before you, and that you do not inquire after their gods, saying, how did these nations serve their gods? I also will do likewise. You shall not worship Yahuwah your Elohim in that way. For every abomination to Yahuwah, which he hates, they have done to their gods. For they burn even their sons and daughters in the fire to their gods. Whatever I command you, be careful to observe it. You shall not add to it, nor take away from it. Deuteronomy chapter 12, verses 29 through 32. It's very clear. It's important to understand the contempt Yahuwah had for her and how much he was expressly against anything dealing with her. When you read your Bible, you will see many mentions to this mother goddess, like in Judges chapter 10, verses 6 and 7. Then the children of Israel, again, did evil in the sight of Yahuwah and served the Baals and the Ashtoreths, the gods of Syria, the gods of Sidon, the gods of Moab, the gods of the people of Ammon, the gods of the Philistines. And they forsook Yahuwah and did not serve him. So the anger of Yahuwah was hot against Israel, and he sold them into the hands of the Philistines and into the hands of the people of Ammon. Judges chapter 10, verses 6 through 7. Now, do you see why Yah was hot against his people? They were serving the Baals and the Ashtoreths. Understand that it's plural because it was these pagan gods from these other tribes. The Baals and the Ashtoreths are saying Father God and Mother God. That's paganism. But there are many references to the Mother Goddess and Ashtoreth. I'll show you a few more. Do you not see what they do in the cities of Judah and in the streets of Jerusalem? The children gather wood, the fathers kindle the fire, and the women knead dough to make cakes for the Queen of Heaven, and they pour out drink offerings to the other gods that they may provoke me to anger. Do they provoke me to anger, says Yahuwah? Do they not provoke themselves to the shame of their own faces? Jeremiah chapter 7, verses 17 through 19. They were making cakes for the queen of heaven. That's her again. I mean, go back and look at what caused Solomon to reap such harsh judgment from Yah. For it was so, when Solomon was old, that his wives turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not loyal to Yahuwah his Elohim, as was the heart of his father David. For Solomon went after Ashtoreth, the god of the Sidonians, and Milcom, the abomination of the Ammonites. Solomon did evil in the sight of Yahuwah, and did not fully follow Yahuwah, as did his father David. That's 1 Kings chapter 11, verses 4 through 6. This is really important to understand. Yahuwah is absolutely against the mother goddess and any other form of worship towards her. He condemned Israel and judged them harshly for them fornicating with her. The first commandment is that we shall not have any other gods before him. But this mother goddess, this queen of heaven, this Madonna, this whore of Babylon, has been in our faces, and many of us have fornicated with her, and it must be stopped. Down the lines of history, her names have changed. Like I said earlier, in Egypt, the moon goddess was Isis. In Greece, she was Artemis. In Rome, she was known as Diana. In Nordic culture, the Vikings, the moon goddess was Juro. And in Roman Catholicism, where most of this modern day trouble and deception comes from, the mother goddess is the Virgin Mary. But let's look at it in this detail, because as you continue to dig further, we can see where so much of the confusion comes from. In the catechisms of the Catholic Church, there are many different writings about Mary, but it's important to understand where they place her. We can go to Catechism 966, which says, "Finally, the Immaculate Virgin, preserved free from all stain of original sin, when the course of her earthly life was finished, was taken up body and soul into heavenly glory and exalted by the Lord as queen over all things, so that she might be the more fully conformed to her Son, the Lord of Lords and conqueror of sin and death." The Assumption of the Blessed Virgin is a singular participation in her Son's resurrection and an anticipation of the resurrection of other Christians. In giving birth, you kept your virginity. In your dormition, you did not leave the world, O Mother of God, but were joined to the source of life. You conceived the living God, and by your prayers will deliver our souls from death. I rebuke that in the name of Yahusha. Do you notice how they casually call her the Queen of Heaven? It says, was taken up body and soul into heavenly glory and exalted by the Lord as queen over all things. The Queen of Heaven is actually an epithet or byname of Mary. That's what they call her. You have to really see how cunning the devil is. He introduced the same pagan religions from the ancient worlds, the mystery religions, but he tied Jesus into it. So because people hear Jesus, they don't really question what they are doing. This is just another reason why I strongly believe in using his Hebrew name, Yahusha, so that I am clear in my distinction from the pagan, blasphemous Messiah, because the Jesus they worship is not the same Jesus you read of in the King James Bible. You must understand that it's all goddess worship, and it has been spread throughout time. There are too many instances to even go over them all. I mean, the capital of the United States is named after her. She is the main symbol of America. Let me show you. What's the name of the capital of the U.S.? Washington, D.C. Washington, District of Columbia, is named after the goddess Columbia. This is a goddess they created to represent liberty. She is known in different ways, Lady Freedom and Lady Liberty. But she is a goddess. The capital of the United States is her district. The New World Virgin Goddess Columbia was just a new manifestation of the ancient Mother Goddess and Virgin Mother of God. Her location is not a coincidence either, being that D.C. is placed right between Virginia and Maryland. Just look at the names, Virginia and Maryland, and where her district is. Clearly, Virgin Mary. Just look at all the idols of the Mother Goddess that is throughout this land. At the top of the United States Capitol building, we have the Statue of Freedom, a depiction of the goddess. It's pagan worship hidden in plain sight. This goddess of liberty has spread throughout the world. The Freemasons of France sent America this gift of Lady Liberty, which is the main symbol of the United States. This is a pagan Roman goddess that all deals in the root of spiritual wickedness. In the Statue of Liberty, she is holding that torch, which is bearing the light, and that is what she symbolized to do. Like it says on the statue's website, the Statue of Liberty enlightening the world. This is Masonic, and it refers to spreading the light, bearing the torch. Just remember, Lucifer is the light bearer. We see this symbolism often, like with Columbia Pictures or Liberty Mutual. Every movie that you see from Columbia, you see this woman holding the torch. It's the same woman. When your eyes are open, you will see this everywhere. I remember back in the time when Beyonce was more relevant, her performance at the Grammys, she depicted herself as the mother goddess, a fertility goddess. She looks very much like the Statue of Liberty. Or when she sang Ave Maria, literally meaning Hail Mary. This is not by accident. All these examples and many more are done on purpose. This is pagan mother goddess worship, and what many people do every year, whether they know it or not, is they contribute to the energy of pagan mother goddess worship that is disguised by religious tradition and mainstream Christianity by celebrating Easter. What I'm trying to say is that we are in the midst of goddess worship, and it's important that you identify it and make sure that you are not partaking in this fornication. It is very subtly pushed on us in unsuspecting ways. But we are being influenced by the whore of Babylon. So that brings me back to what we read in Revelation chapter 17. This chapter is talking of the whore of Babylon, and this is dealing with a religious entity. Now, like I said earlier, what everyone wants to do is easily sum it up to be the Roman Catholic Church and declare it to be case closed, but it's much deeper than that. In those ancient days, Satan made Babylon the capital of his evil rebellion. Babylon is that great city. It was called Babel, when Yahweh confused the languages. From this capital, his false mystery religions were started. There were different aspects of Babylon. There was the religious entity, where, like I said, all the mystery religions formed from, and then there was the political entity, where the world government was being formed. Chapter 17 is dealing with the religious structure. Now, yes, we went back to the beginning to understand how this mother goddess worship started. But it's important to understand that when Babylon the Great, Mystery Babylon, is being referenced from the writer of these scriptures, they are dealing with the major world empire of their time that conquered their people. Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon, which is the same place as the first Babel. When they speak of Babylon, they're not speaking of Nimrod's Babylon, but Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon is in the same place as where the first Babel was. The mother goddess worship and false religion of paganism was also found in Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon, just the same way. The whore was there. The whore was there and worshipped when the captives of Judah were sent to Babylon. What we just did earlier was I went back to the beginning in order for this to be understood. Today, when searching for her and information about her, Semiramis is not openly discussed, except within Freemasonry and the occult. But if you track the story within the beliefs they like to call mythology, the stories are all very similar within all the different empires and the cultures. Just understand that it all goes back to the time of Nimrod, who Freemasonry calls the first Mason. Okay, let's continue. Back to Revelation chapter 17. Verse 1, the angel tells John, "Come, I will show you the judgment of the great harlot who sits on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth were made drunk with the wine of her fornication." In this vision, the great harlot, or great whore, in verse 5, is named Babylon the Great. There are 10 details about the whore of Babylon, so let's go over them. 1, she is a great prostitute. This is not a physical prostitution. In the Bible, prostitution often symbolizes idolatry or religious apostasy, basically spiritual adultery. There are a lot of instances, like in Isaiah chapter 1, verse 21, when Jerusalem was called a harlot or a whore. This whore is selling an apostate religion that pushes people away from the Most High, goes away from the first commandment. We are not talking about a literal woman, but an idolatrous assembly, idolatrous church. Number 2, she sits on many waters. The waters represent the various peoples and nations on the earth, like verse 15 tells us quite clearly. Being that she sits on them, it says that she has worldwide influence. Number 3, with her, the kings of the earth committed adultery. The kings of the earth, the rulers and political leaders of world history, have opened their arms to her influence. The whore of Babylon will ally herself with these world political leaders. Adultery, not in the sense of physical marriage, but again, meaning going after other gods. This all goes back to the commandments. People hate hearing about the commandments, but this all goes back to it. The first commandment, you shall not have any other gods before Yahweh your Elohim. This is why people are whoring, because they are breaking this first commandment and he has no tolerance for it. It all goes back to Yah's commandments. Let's keep going. Number 4, the inhabitants of the earth were intoxicated with the wine of her adulteries. Again, the whore of Babylon's influence will extend beyond the world's rulers to the rest of mankind. Again, this imagery does not describe actual wine and sexual sin, but pictures the people of the world being swept up into intoxication and sin of a false system of religion. And if you open your eyes, you can very clearly see that happening right now, today, in our present time. Number 5, a woman sitting on a scarlet beast. The scarlet beast the woman is sitting on is the Antichrist. For a time, he will support and use the whore's religious false system to affect world unity. But he will then take more political control, like verse 16 alludes to. Scarlet is the color of luxury, splendor, and royalty. Number 6, dressed in purple and scarlet. The whore is also dressed in purple and scarlet. She is portrayed as a prostitute who has applied her trade successfully and became extremely wealthy. Now, on a side note, this is one huge reason why people tie the Roman Catholic Church into solely being the whore of Babylon. And rightfully so, as you see that the ministers of this faith, the Vatican Council, mimic this dress often. But just because they are showing us their connection to this wickedness does not mean that they should be solely linked to this chapter. Now, please understand, they absolutely should be linked. I'm not disputing that. You cannot separate them from the whore. It's just that they should not be solely linked to the whore alone. I will explain this. Number 7, glittering with gold, precious stones, and pearls. Back then, prostitutes often dressed in fine clothes and precious jewels to allure their victims, like Proverbs chapter 7, verse 10 says. And there a woman met him with the attire of a harlot and a crafty heart. The religious harlot Babylon is no different. She dresses herself in luxury to lure the nations into her grasp. People are attracted to wealth and power, and she displays it to lure the adulterous inhabitants of the earth right in. Number 8, she held a golden cup in her hand filled with abominable things and the filth of her adulteries. This is just more evidence of the harlot's great wealth. Just as a prostitute might first get her victims drunk, so the harlot system deceives the nations into committing spiritual fornication with her. Number 9, on her head, mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes and of the abomination of the earth. During those times, it was normal for a prostitute to wear a headband with their name on it, for they were not ashamed. In the end, all false religion stems from Babel, the place of the first one-world religion and one-world government. This label shows us that this is the foundation of this wickedness. Number 10, drunk with the blood of the saints, the blood of those who bore testimony to Yahusha. Very simply, the harlot has killed many of Yah's saints, and there have been many true martyrs throughout the ages, and there will be more again during the tribulation period. And these are 10 details you should remember when looking back at the whore of Babylon in Revelation chapter 17. Now, there are other details, like the fact that she's riding the same beast we saw in Revelation chapter 13. In fact, much of the second half of this chapter in Revelation 17 is going over the same imagery that is discussed in Revelation chapter 13. I discussed that chapter when we discussed the Antichrist and the one world government. This chapter is important because of the whore of Babylon. You see, she came in riding on the beast and used the authority of the beast until her time was over. The whore of Babylon is not the Antichrist. She is the one system before the kingdom of the Antichrist, which all kings, dictators, world leaders, and nations have been forced to bow down to throughout history. The Babylonian mystery religions. No system in this world's history has spiritually enslaved more people. Every false religion in the world can be traced back to Babylon. Even before its citizens try to build the Tower of Babel, Satan has made that great city his headquarters and introduced idolatry. The first secret societies and many of the religious practices that continue to be present today, they all stem back to her, to this system. All this influence eventually appears as the foundational teachings for Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, Gaia worship, and many other cultic systems summed up in the Bible as Mystery Babylon. And so we see that through the whore of Babylon, the world who was under her influence committed adultery with her and were led away from the Most High. She will be used to bring about the one world religion where everyone believes that they are worshiping the same God just by different names. This is a major piece of prophetic history that you can see forming right now in front of our eyes. The influence of this whore Babylon has been running unchecked and free throughout this world, throughout history. The Antichrist will permit this one-world religion, this apostate church, to govern his actions, and that is why she is riding in on him. Now, at some point during the tribulation, when he feels he can become a ruler with absolute power, he and the 10 kings will throw off the prostitute, because in reality, while being dominated by her, they all hate the prostitute. You have to understand what Yah was showing us. You see, this was always about Satan being worshipped as God, and he desires for the world to fully engage in this false worship of his son, to be the coming Messiah. When she is no longer necessary, the 10 kings will bring her to ruin and leave her naked, meaning they will confiscate her temples, her gold, and her costly apparel. And this clears the way for the Antichrist to fulfill the lifetime dream of Satan to get people to worship him as God, and the one-world religion will be set. The whore will be used all the way until the beast, aka the Antichrist, is ready to assume full power and have the whole world worship him. And this is the breakdown of Revelation chapter 17. So in this explanation earlier, I explained that the Roman Catholic Church should not be solely linked to the whore Babylon. Like I said, they absolutely should be linked, there's no question about it, but it's not just the influence of the Catholic Church that the whore consists of. She is the apostate church, the apostate assembly who's filled with adultery and idolatry. And there are many other apostate religions that have come out of Babylon. Hinduism, Taoism, Buddhism, etc. Those beliefs are not centered around the Roman Catholic Church. The Roman Catholic Church, yes, they do have tremendous amount of power, and they are an extremely powerful tool used during these end times. But sometimes we give it more power than we should, and that's how the other evil creeps up around us and we don't see it. The Pope already has a very large role in playing the false prophet, which is a huge end-time role. And the Vatican does orchestrate much blasphemy, idolatry, sorcery, and adultery against the Most High. But if we only pay attention to it, it doesn't help us understand how many other influences around the world are tied into the harlot. Just apply this full chapter. When the beast ruins and burns the harlot, if the harlot was solely the Roman Catholic Church, then he would still have many other religious entities to deal with in order for him to be solely worshipped as God. It all has to fit. So I agree that the Roman Catholic Church is a part of the whore, just not that she is the complete whore. The truth is that many of us outside of the Roman Catholic Church or those other religions I mentioned like Hinduism or Buddhism are also influenced by the whore. She brings an apostate idolatrous religion that takes us out of the will of the Most High. This is a universal apostasy. It does not only pertain to only one class of people, for instance, those influenced by the Vatican. It is also naive to believe that the Vatican controls all religious activity in the world. The religious power in this world is controlled by white and black magic. The white magic is the Roman Catholic Church. Black magic is Freemasonry. I'm not going to go so deep with this to get off track. I'm just saying that all the religious power is not in the hands of the Roman Catholic Church. Just understand, all that are influenced by the whore of Babylon are drunk off her intoxication. The same way a drunken person naturally has no earthly idea what he is doing when they are drunk, this apostate group influenced by the harlot is so carried away with the world that they too do not realize the terribleness of what they are doing. Like I said, the harlot is definitely found amongst the Roman Catholic Church that teaches an idolatrous version of the way. But she is also found in many regular Christian churches all across the world. There is a large percentage of those in organized Protestant churches that are found amongst those who have been influenced by the harlot. This is why there are so many that have said that Father has led them away from organized churches of today, because they can't find an organization that does not teach an idolatrous or watered down adulterous version of the true faith. This is why the Protestant churches celebrate Christmas and Easter, these pagan holidays, because this Babylon worship is incorporated into the Protestant religions. The Protestant church, Protestant Christian denominations are not separate from this whore Babylon, this Babylonian influence. And that's why people confuse themselves when they only focus on Rome, because many people in the Protestant churches love to call out Rome and say Rome this and Rome that, while they sit under these wicked congregations and these wicked Protestant churches participating in the same false worship. So yeah, it's easy to call out the obvious, easy example of those that are influenced by the harlot of Babylon, but it goes much deeper. So for us as believers, we all must go through our belief and what was taught to us under these organizations and get rid of the false teachings, the idolatry, and the adultery, because our Father has no tolerance for it. Look at all those false traditions, the celebration of pagan holidays, the idolatry of money and success, the attachments to this world. Review it within yourself, and if you have been influenced by it, you must get rid of it today. The whore of Babylon is an enemy of the God that we serve, the Elohim of ancient Israel, and we must not be influenced by her and drink from her adulterous cup of wine any longer. So as we understand the end times, it's important to have a full view of the whole world. Today, what the Protestant church has done is focus so much on Rome and their falsehoods that they are not able to see the bigger picture of it at all. They reject Rome, and rightfully so, but they look at Rome as the only enemy, that Rome is the major one. And don't ever confuse what I'm saying. They play a huge role, but the falsehoods are much deeper than Rome. You see, you can strip Rome away and you still have the Greek Orthodox Church. You still have the false Protestant churches with many different denominations all around the world. You have false religion everywhere. Understanding Revelation chapter 17 is understanding how we get to the one world religion where the world marvels after the beast. When this topic is truly understood, it does not allow you to look at religion the same way, and it forces you to live with your eyes opened to the falsehoods. This subject is something that we use in order to understand what will happen with religion. And this subject is also a reason why the Torah has been told to be put away. Because if you actually practice the Torah and understand how Yah has told us to stay away from all these other gods and to worship Him only, if you read this continuously throughout the Torah, then this false worship would not be allowed, and you would understand that He does not accept it. But because people reject the Torah and they say that it's done away with, you don't go back and really understand what Yah desires from us all and how we must keep ourselves from these false religions and these false pagan practices. This subject is something that we use in order to understand what will happen with religion. This topic actually coincides with part 11 and the one world religion. But it is important that I emphasize it because the next chapter oftentimes gets mixed into the same discussion, and they are actually speaking about two different things. But if you just read it as speaking about the same thing because you see mystery in Babylon the Great, you can get yourself confused if it's not all placed in context and studied with proper understanding of what it is they all knew. You see, today, this whore Babylon, she's not discussed in great detail. And why do you think that is? That's because the world worships her, and she is not presented in this way. Those of Israel who rejected the false mother goddess worship understood who the whore was, and if you understand the background of all that, as you should right now, I'm sure this all makes more sense to you as well. We do not partake in the spiritual wickedness spread through this mother goddess. We don't worship or celebrate the moon or fertility. There's a reason why we are called to be set apart, and you will see that as you reject this blasphemy, living set apart becomes so much more clear. As the days get more spiritually dark, remember your purpose as a believer is to be a lampstand. You are the light of the world, and it is your job to spread it. Cast down the lies and the blaspheme. Rebuke the spiritual wickedness in the name of Yahusha. You are a believer. Make sure in these last days you live your life in His truth and through His power and through His love. He loves us so much. So in return, please make sure you live your life as a display of your love for Him and put no one else above Him. He, Yahuwah, is the Most High. And please know and believe, He is worthy of all of our praise. So, let's praise Him together. Be blessed. Hallelujah. Praise Yah. Okay. Thanks again for watching. If this has blessed you, please don't forget to like this and share this video with others. Please send this series to anyone that you know. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to this channel. Yah willing, I upload every Friday. Also, please don't forget to follow this ministry on Facebook and Instagram, as well as on my website, truthunedited.com. Please note, if you no longer see this channel on this platform, please look for the videos on my website, truthunedited.com. Thank you for watching. I'm thankful for all of you. Thank you especially to those Yah has placed it on your hearts to give, and you have done so. Thank you for your assistance in carrying out this ministry every week. Thank you for your blessings and your prayers. They truly support this ministry. You have no idea. Thank Thank you for your obedience to Yah's call on your heart. Be blessed. Okay, thanks again for watching. I love you all.